before I begin with my speech, which is going to be presented in English, if I may, just say a few greeting words in Mandarin to do justice to our host. 我们在座的各位领导，在我还没有开始之前，首先让我带来马来西亚的问候。
So before I start, greetings from Malaysia. At this early spring season, we're honored to be invited once again to this important session. The Forum on Democracy has become a major event for us to be able to come to China and join in discussions once in a year.
So, ladies and gentlemen, knowing very well that I'm given time constraint of about 6 minutes, so I have to make full use of my 6 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, over the years, democracy has been cherished worldwide. Everybody has been saying that. The practice of this shared value varies in form and essence from nation to nation under the influence of their respective cultures, norms, and history that help shape the mode of governance. In this respect, ladies and gentlemen, the diverse levels of modernization and development, trajectories of nation building, and history of nationhood across a developing and underdeveloped world stand out as the key parameters having heavy bearing on their diverse polity. This has consistently been the blind spot which the developed West have arrogantly turned a blind eye to. From the perspective, perhaps, all these former colonies of theirs are nothing more than their easy targets for coercive imposition of Western democracy through regime change, economic resource plundering, and cultural subjugation. The Chinese narrative, on the other hand, in support of the diversity of democratic practice, see the nexus between the attainment of people's aspirations and the level of social development that is capable of supporting it. This is particularly pertinent in the case of Global South, where the relatively young nations, formerly colonized by the Western powers, have to prioritize the basic subsistence needs of the people vis-a-vis the ballot box that is signifying the practice of Western electoral democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, the Western democracy has been holding sway on the world stage for the past 7 decades after World War II. The present model of electoral democracy is widely touted as the West's creation and has ever since been made the one-size-fits-all benchmark for democratic rule worldwide. Unfortunately, this turns out to be a fallacy. The coercive transplant of electoral democracy, either through military intervention or brutal regime change, as was initiated by Washington in the developing world, has only added more failed states and ensuing humanitarian disasters to the lists. People's well-being and aspirations are nowhere to be seen. The so-called people-elected governments installed in the vassalized states merely play pawns to the foreign power puppeteers. While the US has been taking pride of its brand of electoral democracy, ladies and gentlemen, alongside making it a common value to rally its like-minded allies globally against China, the ubiquitous, pathetic scenes of illicit drug abuse, vicious squalor posed by the street vagabonds, and the prevalent looting of shops in the name of so-called $0 shopping in some American cities have, however, presented to the world the dysfunctionality of its democratic governance. Ladies and gentlemen, be that as it may, the bipartisan legislators on the Capitol Hill seem to remain unperturbed by this. Instead, they continue to go hell-bent to legislate laws targeting others deemed challenging to the US primacy. Enhancing the long-arm jurisdiction apparently takes precedence over the livelihood of its people, notably the lower social strata. The famous quotable quotes on democracy of the late US President Abraham Lincoln that reads, "Of the people, by the people, and for the people," has pervasively been dubbed the cornerstone of democracy, modern democracy. But never would he have anticipated that democracy could ever be weaponized against geopolitical challenges or potential adversaries in the global power play. The contemporary crusaders of Western democracy have long claimed monopoly to the interpretation of democracy. Non-West values and cultural norms alien to them, particularly those inherited from ancient civilizations, are arbitrarily labeled anathema to democracy. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, with my little knowledge of Chinese culture, Chinese civilization, perhaps if I may cite one example here, the value of benevolence in state governance, or in Chinese we call it 仁政, as was propounded by Mencius Mengzi. Born before Christ, he is a great Chinese thinker of the mid-warring states period in ancient China. After Confucius, perhaps speaks volumes of the relevance of people-centric governance in ancient China, even before the word democracy was being promoted. This is clearly manifested in his words of wisdom that reads as follows. I tried to do my own literal translation based on my knowledge of classical Chinese. The subject predominates the state and the monarch in the hierarchical significance of the benevolent governance. In Chinese, it reads as follows. 民为贵, 社稷次之, 君为轻. Ladies and gentlemen, this millennium-old wisdom now finds its resonance in the whole process, people's democracy in China. Its philosophy may remain incomprehensible to the West, which is more familiar with electioneering, populism, and gerrymandering. Nonetheless, it's the relevance of the people's participation and the end results of the governance that matter most in the practice of democracy. As the global dynamics are now going increasingly multipolar, respect for diversity in democracy is no longer a myth, but a reality to embrace worldwide in pursuit of a coherent global governance. Ladies and gentlemen, on this note, I thank you for your attention. Thank you. 谢谢.